assessment. I am.
Did you? So you have to like quite often you have to like put like England in, otherwise you get all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
not used Copilot yet, but I'm still like finding Chat GPT is pretty cool. Right, here we go, guys. We should be here. We go. Yeah, cool. Right, welcome everyone. I bet. Oh, I'm not. Haven't prepared this. Sorry, I'm slightly behind. I'm gonna have to disappear in 5 minutes to get the dinner out the oven for the kids. So, but meanwhile, I just need to get the usual back office boxes ticked here for this stuff. So, want that there, and then we want this bit here. So yeah, usual stuff, guys. I've got a load of questions in from the week, which is all good. But hey, what shouldn't that? Loads of questions in from the week. What we're going to do, well, what I'm going to do, what I plan to do, is do the anonymized questions that have come in through the week first, then do the anonymized questions that come in the live chat. I'll delete non-anonymized questions in the live chat, and then finish the live stream here. And then I'm going to go over to our Facebook page and try the live stream there. So that's the plan. So pin that. That's all good. I think we're good. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, what else I've got to say? Anonymization, all good. You're not legal advice, so we're doing our best here to be helpful, but it's not in any way substitute for proper legal advice. We're obviously basing our answers also on limited information a lot of the time, so it's not always possible to give a really detailed answer. And I'll say this a few times today. If you do find this useful, give us a like and a share. In general, guys, if you're watching videos on the channel and you find it useful, and you also happen to be in various Facebook groups where people are asking similar questions, do feel free just to share the link, just to get it out there, because I do think that some of the videos I've done recently are kind of frequently asked questions. Well, in fact, I know they are. So yeah, but yeah, cool. Right, so let's get the questions up from the week first of all. Question one. Bear with me. Oh yeah, a bit of gossip first, actually, as well. We're doing. So there was a real one. What I'm told is a really good session by Doughty Street Chambers yesterday. So it's like online on their YouTube channel. So Doughty Street Chambers is, I mean, I'm going to say it's the best the most authoritative source of useful information out there, really. Garden Court Chambers is also really good. And I'm sure there's some other ones as well. So I'm basically putting in the link to that into the live stream chat. So it's about hour and 15 or something. Well, I can't remember how long it is. It's not terribly long. Hour and 20 is, yeah. So, but basically, it's just top of the game lawyers talking about stuff that's happened recently. I haven't actually watched it. Yeah. I've just watched the beginning bit, but there's lots of stuff there about suitability of accommodation. And as I say, these are the barristers who kind of argue for people who are homeless. Technically, they argue against people as well, I guess. I'm not quite sure how it works because I think they have to be unbiased, but they kind of are the ones who advance the best arguments for people who are homeless. So they're really good people there. So anyway, yeah, that's that. Then let's actually get into the questions. So question one, and there are some long questions, but I have left them as they are because, just because they're good questions. In fact, the first couple are actually just things I want to comment on. So first, no, not that one. It's the thingy. So the first one's actually just a comment picked up on the channel this week, which I thought was useful. Oh my gosh, we're losing the ability to use my keyboard. Which is just this one here. So let's face facts. If you challenge the council, the power dynamic is usually weighted against you. But if you persevere, there's every likelihood you'll prevail. Keep at it and don't lose hope. So that's from someone who I'm guessing is going through it or has been going through it recently. But yeah, I just want to sort of just say that's a really good message. I think that's the kind of key, is just kind of persevering. I would say the council's biggest weapon is basically just to obfuscate stuff and just kind of kick the can down the road and hope you give up. So by not giving up, you're kind of upping the chance of getting a good outcome. That's the first. That's just a comment, as I say. So thanks for that person. And this next one here, I couldn't resist putting this up. This is written by a landlord, and as you may not be surprised, I'm not terribly, I'm not landlord's biggest fans. So this was on the video about rent increases, but I just wanted to kind of make this point. It's not really relevant for tonight, but I just thought I just need to say it. So the landlord says, if your rent is increased, check what similar properties are being advertised for you in your area. If your new rent is far higher, then you can challenge it. If the new rent is in line with other rents, then your landlord is being fair. I think it's worth remembering that for many landlords, they're undergoing increasing financial pressure. I have one property where the rent is £875, but my mortgage payment is 877. And as if that, what they don't mention is the fact that they're getting a house at the end of it. So at the end of their mortgage term, they'll have like hundreds of thousands of pounds that housing benefit or whatever, or the tenants are paid for. So yeah, just kind of this idea that, just go look, yeah, you'll be able to find something that's cheap enough. That's just not the reality. The bottom line is pretty much everywhere in the country, particularly in the southeast, but not just in the southeast, you're not going to find rents which are actually affordable. It's just yeah, this idea kind of this sort of Lee Anderson sort of mentality where you just need to go and shop in the reduced section of Sainsbury's and everything will be all right. It doesn't work if everyone's needing to do that, because then there's nothing in the reduced section of Sainsbury's. Anyway, they're the two kind of bits I thought I'd put in there first, and we've actually got some questions coming up. So, question 3. Just a quick question. Who is the best person to send a homeless letter to in an email in Leicester? Not sure who to send it to. So I'm not actually going to answer this question like specifically about Leicester, because it's not really relevant to many people, but it does kind of raise this kind of issue that you have with councils, because certainly my suggestion is always when you're making a homeless application, it's best to email it to the housing team. But some council systems specifically don't advertise their email address, and they'll put you onto an online form which you have no proof that you sent it off. So this is a problem I expect is not just Leicester. It would be a lot of different councils. And effectively, I'll probably answer it by looking at Leicester in a minute. But what you effectively want to do is you want to go onto your council's website, and there will be a well advertised section, which is basically the councillor's contact details. And there's probably like, a few dozen councillors in your district. But if you look at the addresses they cover, you'll find a couple, at least one councillor, probably 2, maybe even 3 sometimes, councillors that cover your current address or your last address. And I would suggest they're probably the best starting point, unless you can find something better, because you can contact them and just say, look, I need to get an email address for the council's housing team. Can you help me out? And you hope that they're going to say, yeah, sure, I deal with them all the time. Here's the email address. And hopefully that way you'll get the route into sending an email. But I do appreciate that a lot of council websites are not easy to navigate, and they do seem to obscure things like email addresses. So yeah, and I wouldn't have a problem with the online forms if you've got a receipt with it, but you often don't. So you kind of fill it in, send it off, and you've got no idea where it's gone or anything. So Shannon?
I often find as well, and I don't know why it happens, and it's so weird, but sometimes I can't find the email address for someone on the council's like specific website. If you Google the department you're after with the words email address, sometimes it will come up in the Google search. And if you click on the page, the email will disappear. So that's another way that you can potentially get the email. I think lots of websites also will have a duty to refer email. And I know I'm perhaps not a huge fan of the duty to refer. I want to speak for everyone else. It's worth CCing that in as well, just covering your bases. Like, it doesn't matter how many people at the council you're emailing, as long as it gets to someone, and then they can't say that they haven't got it.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Yeah, I'm less than a fan of the duty to refer system as well. To put it mildly. Cool. So that's question 3. Unless Carousel will have got anything to add to it. This is when the questions start getting a bit longer. So, but as I say, they're good questions, so I haven't got a problem with that. So this one here, number 4. Hey guys, my friend sent a letter to housing a few days ago, got a reply back saying to ring this number, housing options team, rang the number, told them the situation, got told there is a housing crisis, and they have to sign a declaration of homelessness in a meeting in a face-to-face, in person, whatever, or on the phone on the 28th of February. Not sure if this is normal practice, not sure what will happen on the 20th of February. Will the 56 days start from then? Has it started already? Had to make another homeless application on the home choice, so I did that also. Got an email back saying, thank you for submitting your inquiry documents via the housing application inquiry form. We'll be in contact with you as soon as we can, and this should be within 28 working days. Not sure what to make of it, or can you shed any light on what the next steps will be? So really good question. Well, a few questions, I guess. The first question, I guess, is not sure if this is normal practice. This is probably normal practice in a lot of different councils. That does not mean to say it's legal, but it's probably not unusual. And I guess the first question I would have to really be able to answer this is the person in this situation, are they already legally homeless, or are they threatened with homelessness, as in, are they likely to become homeless within the next 56 days? Because if they're threatened with homelessness, although it's not good practice, technically you're not necessarily losing out on a whole lot if they're delaying the interview that long. I mean, I guess technically you are missing out because they should be doing an assessment of your situation ASAP. They should be doing a personalised housing plan ASAP with the hope of preventing you becoming homeless. So yeah, I mean, I just have very little hope or very little kind of trust in the prevention duty in general. But I'm sure there are cases where it does work. So in one sense, if that's the case, if you're only threatened with homelessness rather than actually homeless, then it's probably less pressing that they haven't booked an interview in for you until more than a month away, 6 weeks pretty much. But if you're already homeless, then this is a serious problem because you may well be owed the interim accommodation duty. That's going to be owed if you might be homeless, you might be eligible, and you might have a priority need. In which case, they're delaying apparently doing anything, including doing the personalised housing plan, starting the relief period, and so on. That's kind of you're basically been deprived of the assistance that would afford you. So I'm going to stop talking and go and get my kids' dinner out the oven. But between you other guys, if you could just continue having a stab at that one, that'd be great. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, if I kick off and then Karis will, because you know a bit more about this than I do. But I think one of the things that stood out for me as well is having to make another homeless application on the home choice. So just for the person who submitted this question, you've not made a legal homelessness application via that home choice. You've made an application for housing under Part 6 of the Housing Act, which the housing department would probably have asked you to do at your interview stage. So it's not necessarily a bad thing in terms of sort of like getting that confirmation back that you've submitted it and they'll be in contact. It's not relevant at all to your sort of homeless application under Part 7. And like Mike was saying, the duty for interim accommodation there. So that's sort of one of the things I wanted to highlight. Paris or Will, do you want to add anything in on this one?
After you, Karis.
So an application should trigger what is called the prevention duty. So they have a duty, the local authority have a duty to prevent you from becoming homeless if you're at risk of homeless, and that's where the 56 days element comes from. And then also, you're frowning. I can see your eyebrows frowning.
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, no. It was just my face. No, I wasn't reacting to what you were saying. Please go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you off.
And they'll be taking in assessing you for what is called the main housing duty, which is if you come under, like, if you have vulnerabilities, which will come under what's called priority need. So that's where they assess you if they have a main housing duty for you, but you'll be in a relief duty and a prevention duty before that. So there's stages you get where they assess your application of being houses and what duty they owe to you. And that is just a process you'll have to go through.
You're right, guys. Sorry to butt in there as well. So there's just this relates to a question that's just been asked in the live chat as well. So it's probably what, I think it sounds like we've covered it, but it's obviously a fairly common question, and I've no idea what you guys said. Have you finished, or do you want to? Is there more to say?
I had a couple of things to say, if that's okay. Number one, I don't think this thing about sign a declaration of homelessness, that's a load of rubbish. There's no such thing as a declaration of homelessness. And even if there was, it's worthless, because I could sign a declaration that I'm president of the United States. It doesn't mean I am. And that doesn't mean anything, but it seems to be just a device to delay. So I would say this is an example of gatekeeping with a fairly big G. It's not the biggest G you could get, because the biggest one, I think we come on to that in another question, is where they say, we don't do this anymore. We don't provide emergency housing. That's the one sort of go away and don't come back. Whereas this one is, can you come back? Initially, it's 28th of February. But then by the end of the question, it's 28 working days from now, which, forgive my bad maths, but that's basically like 5.5 weeks, isn't it? So that's more. That's probably even longer if we work it out. So what they should have done, I think, and the first thing that Mike did was to say, do you have any vulnerabilities and are you facing street homelessness? And if they did ask that and say, well, if not, then if you don't mind, we're a bit busy, we'll leave it. You could say that's just about understandable. But if they invite you to look for interim accommodation, or sorry, if they invite you to ask for interim accommodation, then they should be doing that. But this is fairly dreadful, I think. And I mean, the only good thing in the story is that they did get a written acknowledgement of the fact that they've been in touch, which would make it harder for them to say, oh, what application?
And I think that's another sort of point to raise, perhaps, is and it's probably not a fight that this person wants to have, but there's something in the code of guidance that even if you apply under Part 6, the local authority should take like extra measures to recognise when it's a Part 7 application. So you could argue if they still wasn't accepting your homeless application, actually, no, you did this and you did inform them that you were homeless and asking for help, therefore triggering that homeless application under Part 7.
Yeah, and it's up to the local authority, the council, to make inquiries to see what your eligibility is
Yeah,
and what your needs
so
are.
the for the person asking this question and also the live chat. So I did a video, was it this week? Kind of like the thumbnail says limbo, so it's kind of this idea that people are in limbo, exactly like this situation here. And just to say that when you first contact the council and tell them that you're homeless and you want their help, that's when the homeless application has actually been triggered. It's not when, as Will says, they get you back to kind of sign a homelessness declaration. It's just nonsense. But there is then this kind of, there's not a set time limit to when the relief duty should then start ticking, but realistically it shouldn't be more than a few days. So when we're talking here about 6 weeks, if this ever got to the LGO, they'd basically say, nah, this is, it's ridiculous. And they basically, one of the things they would do is they'd backdate the application by 5.5 weeks to kind of give you more priority. And they'd also give a payment for the delay and the uncertainty and distress that would have caused. So I would, I wasn't here for this whole conversation, but it sounds like we've kind of covered the bases there. But yeah, do check out the video I did about the kind of how long does the final decision take? Because to answer the question, which I apologise if someone's already said this, but the timer has started ticking now. It does not start on the 28th of Feb. It's already going. The relief duty should already been triggered most probably by now. And certainly the interim accommodation duty would apply if it was just those criteria met. So yeah, but yeah, check out the video for a bit more detail on it. So cool, that's number 4. Then 5 is giant, but again, it's good, and it follows. Oh wow, it's bigger than I remember actually. So it follows on from a question we had last week about someone who had fled from Guildford from domestic abuse, gone to Lewisham, and the information we had last week was that essentially they'd been there for 5 months out of the last 12, which would mean that they essentially don't have a local connection to Lewisham, and they then approached Greenwich. And Greenwich would basically been difficult. Now, there's been some developments here, so we're going to kind of just, as I say, bear with this. There's obviously a lot to this, but this is the reality of homelessness situation. So in one sense, there's kind of a lot of value in kind of going through it, because there are some kind of very concrete questions, kind of at different stages of it. So you've got someone so heavily pregnant, originally from Guildford, moved to Lewisham, 6 months. We're in Lewisham for 6 months due to domestic issue. And then to Greenwich, where she's been sofa surfing. So now, if I just skip ahead, I mean, you can obviously pause it and kind of read it through in detail. But for me, this is the key bit here, because she said she was living in Lewisham Borough for 6 months out of the year, and she's put here, or the person, the person it's about says it's January 24 to June 2024. Now, unless it was literally the 1st of January to the 30th of June, that's not 6 months, that's less than 6 months, because if let's say it was you moved in on 16th of January 24, then 16th of Feb, 16th of March, 16th of April, 16th of May, 16th of June, that's only 5 months. So you would not have local connection to Lewisham, again, based on the information we have here, unless the very rare situation would be when you literally went from 1st of Jan through to the 30th of June. So Lewisham, there is no local connection to Lewisham based on this information, except, sorry, let me correct that slightly, because we've then got this mention of employment. It says she's registered as having employment there, but I'm not quite sure what that means, whether she has employment there or whether she's registered to have employment there. I don't know if that means she's registered with the job centre there or something. Now, if you have a permanent employment contract in an area, then yes, you would have local connection through the employment. And if that is the case, then yes, then she would have local connection to Lewisham. But I would suspect that that's not necessarily the case right now. I don't know. I might be wrong. But yeah, if there's a local connection, if there is employment in Lewisham as in a permanent employment contract, even if it's kind of part-time, there'll be local connection to Lewisham, in which case Greenwich could refer back to Lewisham, because I guess the point here is that because it's only been sofa surfing in Greenwich, there is no local connection to Greenwich. So Greenwich are at liberty to refer her back to an area where she has a local connection and is safe to do so. Now, she also has a local connection to Guildford, but it looks to me like there's evidence there that it's not safe for her to be referred back to Guildford. So now that gets a bit more complicated, because you've got Lewisham closing a case and then reopening it again. That's not helpful of Lewisham to have done that. And you've then got Greenwich basically been told to close her case, presumably because of all the mess around that's going on. And again, that's going to make things more complicated. Now, this is when we've got a few permutations here and iterations of the answer. If she has a local connection to Lewisham through employment, then she pragmatically needs to approach Lewisham Council, and Lewisham will have the duty to house her, even though it could be outside of Lewisham, district. If she doesn't have local connection to Lewisham, then in this situation she can basically apply anyway, because they can't refer her back to the one place she does definitely have local connection, which is Guildford. Does that follow in terms of what I've just said, guys? Have you kind of followed what I've been able to deduce from that? So I think it looks like there's multiple failures from different councils here, which has not made things easy. But in effect, I would say, again, based on this information, she can approach Greenwich. They can say, well, hang on a minute, you don't have a local connection here, and we think you do to Lewisham. But then if they tried to make that referral back to Lewisham, Lewisham would say, hang on a minute, she only lived here for less than 6 months, so she doesn't have a local connection. And let's face it, actually, because we're now in the 16th of January 2024, that it's now impossible for her to have lived in Lewisham for 6 out of the last 12 months, because it would have had to have been the 1st of January anyway. So as I say, if there is no current employment in Lewisham, then she doesn't have connection there anyway. And if her preference, it sounds like her preference is for her to approach Greenwich, therefore she should approach Greenwich and pursue the application there. But I think the kind of situation. I mean, there's a mention here earlier. So there was a complaint made, and then it says here, in retaliation to a complaint, Greenwich appeared hostile, providing housing options she cannot afford due to a lack of income. Now the council is trying to return solution. Now, Greenwich might be hostile anyway. It might not be anything to do with the complaint, because it's not unusual for councils to kind of try and tell people that private renters is their only option. The bit about here is definitely wrong. So because they mentioned the 5-year, so here, so the Greenwich officer here does not know what they're talking about, because although the Part 6 policy in Greenwich might say you need to live there for 5 years, if you are homeless and therefore going through the homeless application route, which sounds like this person definitely is, then you basically sidestep the 5-year residency requirement, and you can effectively get onto the housing register with no local connection at all in this kind of circumstance. So I think I've kind of picked out the kind of main points which I can see from this case. It's going to come down to whether there's current employment in Lewisham. If there is, then I'd say approach Lewisham, because pragmatically, probably more sensible to do it that way. If there's not current employment in Lewisham, then go wherever the hell you want. And if you want to be in Greenwich, then pursue the application in Greenwich. So again, that's my answer based on what I think is the situation here. Guys, you've got anything to add or take away from that? If not, we'll assume that, go for that. Yeah, cool. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully it gives you a little bit of a window into when you've got multiple local councils involved in a situation. Sadly, I think the prospect of getting settled accommodation before the baby is born is minimal anywhere she goes to. So that's the next, that's obviously a massive thing. The more support she can have around her, the better, I guess, at that point. And as I say, if there is more support in Greenwich, then that's a good reason to be there. But the friend in Greenwich does not count as a local connection, just to make that point as well. So, yeah, hopefully that all made sense, guys. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, but yeah, hopefully it made a bit of sense anyway. So next question, which is 6. I'm trying to help a family friend who's been sofa surfing for a while and has had severe anxiety and depression, currently taking meds and going through therapy. He's a single man, 41 years old, no kids. His 56-day relief duty ended on the 31st of December, but despite few emails, the caseworker disappeared. What can he do? He's on universal credit for plus limited capability for work. I think that would stand for limited work capability, I guess. Yeah, I believe he's been ignored. What could the reason be? Thank you in advance. So again, I'd point you towards the video I did this week on the whole limbo thing, kind of relief duty limbo, because that's exactly what we've got. Another case here. The relief duty should have ended on 31st of December. And that would mean the final decision should have been made on the 1st of January. Obviously, it wasn't a working day, so the 2nd of January, that's when it should have been made. Doesn't look like that's happened here. And as I say, that because that decision's not been made, this person's kind of just in that limbo situation where they don't know what duty is going to be owed. I would say it's very likely on this, entirely possible, let's say, it's difficult to give kind of a certainty on this, that this person is in priority need, because severe anxiety and depression certainly could render someone vulnerable and therefore in priority need. It's not a given. There would have to be a fair assessment of that person's situation, taking into account their current treatment, current medical opinion about them. Are the meds working? Is the therapy helping? All of that kind of stuff. But if the person still has severe anxiety and depression, yes, they are highly likely to be in priority needs. So this is a difficult one practically because there's that lack of certainty about priority needs. You have to be a bit more careful in terms of complaining and potentially pissing them off, because what they might do is say, well, okay, yeah, we've delayed it, so we'll just issue a non-priority, and then you've got to fight with that. Shannon?
Well, so this was sort of going to be my point. Do you think it would be worth him requesting interim accommodation based on his sort of anxiety and depression potentially getting worse? And that would almost be a kick up the proverbial for the council to respond. It would be harder for them to ignore, and it will also potentially push them into a decision, but making it clear why you're requesting it is because actually your medical conditions that are, not the ordinary healthy and robust person are getting worse. So I imagine it is for this person. I don't want to assume that, but I can imagine it is if you're sofa surfing. And sort of get in contact that way. And again, when you get in contact again, rather than just replying to your current worker, because there's normally quite a high turnover in staff at local authorities, particularly within the housing department, but also people might just be off on annual leave, CC in that duty to refer email, CC in the general housing options department email address that you can find that we talked about at the beginning of the live stream, and you'll be more likely to get a response, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's a good idea in terms of how to approach it. I intend to do a video at some point based on same-day non-priority decisions, because although it's not directly relevant here, it's not entirely irrelevant either. And effectively, the principle is around assessing someone's priority need when it comes to mental health issues is that as a bare minimum, the council need to talk to the current treating professionals. Now, what councils often do is then also send it to their independent medical advisor, which is often now medical, who never assess the person, never actually see their full medical records or anything. So actually their opinion doesn't carry a lot of weight. But councils tend to give more weight to the now medical assessor's opinion rather than the own treating professional. So I think, I'd say in a situation like this, the council do need to be making inquiries of the GP, of the therapist, of anyone else who's involved, as a bare minimum to work out whether they're actually vulnerable. Now, whether or not that's happened yet, we don't know, and this person won't know either yet because it's all happens behind closed doors, really. But certainly, yeah, as Shannon says, there's certainly reasons to believe that this guy might be in priority need. Therefore, assuming he might also be eligible, and sofa surfing, so he's homeless, they would owe him the interim accommodation duty. But I like that idea about requesting interim accommodation and just kind of using that as a way to kind of like remind them that they actually exist and just see what happens. And also probably getting hold of the personalised housing plan and just seeing what they've actually picked up on so far, as in what the council's picked up on so far, wouldn't hurt either.
Because I think to read, go on, sorry.
I was just going to say it's a delicate situation where you're kind of, you run the risk of just getting them to shut it all down and just say you're not in priority needs. Sorry, Shannon.
No, I interrupted you. I think just to reassure the person though, think the whole what could be the reason as to him being ignored. I don't think it's necessarily because there's a negative decision being made there, because they'd be quite quick to tell you. I think it's more likely that they've either forgotten about you or the caseload's too high and all of that jazz. So I don't think you need to stress about don't need to stress, but do you know what I mean? It's not because they've necessarily made a decision against you, because they would let you know that. It's more that they've probably forgotten and just have left it and haven't looked at your case recently.
Yeah, cool. Anything else on that one, guys?
If I could just say, this sort of ties in. I don't want to jump the gun, but there's one of the questions in the live stream is, or on the chat, is 10 days a sufficient? 10 working days is sufficient time to get a response to a request for the council to help you with homelessness, and it ties in with this one that the key issue, I think, is whether somebody requires accommodation now as temporary accommodation, and it depends what you mean by homelessness. Because if you're saying I'm homeless because I'm occupying unsuitable accommodation, maybe it is okay to, I mean, depending on how unsuitable it is, it's okay to wait a little while but for a reply. But if you are saying I am street homeless, I was evicted yesterday and I'm here with my kids and my bags, then there's absolutely no excuse for any delay, and it should be immediate. In this case, obviously the person doesn't have kids, but as you say, I mean, if he's vulnerable and he's on the street, he could be suffering serious problems. So it's a question of asking for temporary accommodation, I think, is to clarify that they are actually homeless, rather than just seeking general assistance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just to kind of steal a point that Shannon makes quite a lot, is that councils essentially are strongly advised to have like a 24-hour emergency duty number, so that you can ring them up in the middle of the night. And the point of it being there is that there are emergencies within homelessness, obviously. So yeah, as everyone else has said, a 10-day delay when there's an urgent kind of need to provide interim accommodation, that's obviously unacceptable. 100%, it should only be a few hours, really. But where there's kind of like where it's less of a live issue, I guess, 10 working day kind of turnaround from like requesting information, for example, would probably be seen to be reasonable, although it's not particularly helpful. So yeah, cool. Okay. Penultimate question that we're going to deal with from the week. So I've heard that if you get help under domestic violence law, they have to house you outside of town it happened in. Is that true? As I can't go to my hometown due to support. Sorry, it wasn't anonymized, but anyway. So there's a video I'm about to publish, which is basically about Manchester City Council. They got there to pay £5.5 grand compensation to a victim of domestic abuse, who they basically did this. They said, oh, you need to be housed in another area, and they hadn't actually assessed, whether that was suitable, whether, because in this case she had autism, and she basically said, I really struggle with new areas I've never been to before. I need to be somewhere that I'm familiar with. And Manchester City Council effectively, the complaint was upheld on a number of levels, and it was because Manchester kind of took that blanket, oh, you need to be housed somewhere else. Now, that was, in one sense, the specific reason there was about the autism diagnosis, but that's not the only way that it would be limited. It's not unusual at all that someone is at risk of domestic abuse, and yet if they were to be rehoused in their own town with their support network, that would basically mitigate the risk of domestic abuse enough. It's never going to be taken to zero, and it's not going to be zero if you move area, because plenty of perpetrators will follow you anyway. So there's no blanket. The answer is there's no blanket requirement to be housed somewhere else. but councils regularly do make it out like that's the case, as because they know it's going to put people off there, because they know, you know, if they say, oh, you know, it's going to be 200 miles away and you don't know anyone, and you know, you've got your kid, your young kid there with you and stuff, and you have to get new schools and start from scratch. That's not in any way a way to operate. And actually, in that LGO decision with Manchester, as an exercise, they had to sit down the whole housing team and say, you know, get them to think, what is it like for a person who is affected by domestic abuse? What's it like for them going through this process? How are we going to actually meet their needs? And there's some really, I'll save it for the video I'm going to put out, but there's some really good bits in there from the LGO. I thought it was a really good decision in a number of ways. But yeah, the answer is they can make accommodation available outside the town, as they can for anyone. But it certainly doesn't have to be. There's nothing in law that says they have to do that. If there's very strong evidence from, say, the police or supporting agencies that the perpetrator is very high risk and, you know, is at large in the town, you know, they got very specific kind of concerns about that, then you know, that would hold some weight. But then if they're that dangerous, they should probably be in prison. So it's kind of like, you know, you have to kind of balance that all out. So yeah, that's the answer to that one. Again, unless anyone wants to chip in with anything. If not,
small thing.
Go
Sorry,
on.
just that, like, when you're having these interviews with the housing options officers and stuff, or doing your PHP and stuff, it should be a collaborative approach. That is in the code of guidance. So I think, particularly in sort of situations like these, you do have a voice. You do have to be sort of listened to. Like, it's recommended by the Secretary of State. You know what I mean? That it's a collaborative approach and takes into your needs. And you'll know your home area. You'll know where you feel at risk, and that's important. So yeah, Brian, I know it's really, really difficult, but if you can try and advocate for yourself as best as possible, and you can search the code of guidance for those bits I've just mentioned as well. It's quite a searchable document online.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things we're saying is definitely put it in writing. So yeah, from your first approach, you know, when you're emailing the council to trigger the application, put your reasons for needing to be in that area down. And support network and, you know, kids' schools and all that sort of stuff is entirely reasonable to be asking for. But you can't guarantee it. You can't make them do that. But that you can kind of make them assess the suitability properly, and basically say why they think, you know, this out of area placement is suitable for you. If they don't do that, then they definitely lose the argument.
And there are many experienced domestic violence advocates out there. So there's charities in your local area. There'll be many, and you could even get an IDVA, or if you've not even had one already.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit of a tangent, but the MARAC, the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Conference, which kind of like these multi-agency meetings around domestic abuse, they hold a lot of weight as well. And certainly the IDVAs I've worked with in Bedford are very good. You know, if there's some kind of situation like this, they would basically, you know, get the MARAC chair to put it in writing to say, you know, we advise that this person is housed within the area because of X, Y, Z reasons around, you know, support network and so on. So it's definitely, definitely a reasonable thing to ask. I think what we can't say is you can definitely get what, you know, you can't guarantee it. But do check out the Manchester City video that when I put it up, I might put it up tonight actually, just so it's there. Cool, right. Number 8. Last questions that's coming through the week that we're going to deal with on this one. As I say, for those who joined late, we had loads of questions coming during the week, most of which were not anonymized. So when we've wrapped up the live stream chat, it may well be that Will Shannon and Karis disappear off to have a life. But I'm going to go over to our Facebook page and do a live stream. They just want to try it out anyway, just to see how it all works. But we're going to just kind of wrap up those final questions that came in through the week on Facebook rather than YouTube. Appreciate that might seem annoying, but that's how we're going to do it. So, yeah, number 8. Do you have any advice on how to secure a council housing association accommodation and to steer clear of being offered a final offer into a private rented accommodation? Section 193 is kicked in, but with a 24-month bidding limit. Also, bids seem to be restricted a fair amount, and most every week there are no eligible properties to bid on. On the one-off time and eligible CD popped up, there was 143 bidders in front. Time can pass by quickly, and it seems this could be a plan to palm people off into private rented accommodation. If there has not been a successful bid by the end of the 24-month limit, could this be likely? Okay, obviously quite a few questions in there, all pretty good questions. So because it's the law, we've got to be really pedantic. And the final offer. So there's two. I think this is corresponding to the final accommodation offer. Now, final accommodation offers is an offer of accommodation during the relief period, so before the final decision's been made, of a 6-month assured short hold tenancy. So I will circle back to that in a minute because there is one situation where it might kick in. But if Section 193 has basically been accepted, so that's the main housing duty, that's the one which says you're in priority needs, you're not intentionally homeless, you've got local connection, you're homeless, you're eligible. So, and therefore we owe you the main duty. The council can still discharge that into private rented accommodation without, I think Newham Council in London, they don't appear to give social housing out at all for anyone who's come through the homeless route. So they essentially, I think in Newham, it seems that everyone gets private rented accommodation based on the information I've seen. So I guess part of what this question is saying, can you kind of steer the council away from that? There are a few things you can do that might have a minor impact on it, but really, I would say it's kind of out of your control whether you get private rented accommodation or not. There might be local factors which will kind of increase the likelihood or whatever. To circle back to this point here, the only situation where this might actually be technically correct is if you refused an offer of accommodation in the relief period, as in refused not the final accommodation offer in the relief period, not the final Part 6 offer, but refused some other kind of accommodation which was likely to be available for 6 months. The council can say, okay, well, we're going to owe you the main housing duty, but we're only going to give you a final accommodation offer equivalent rather than the main duty. And the difference is basically a final accommodation offer is only a 6-month assured short hold tenancy, whereas a main housing duty private rented accommodation offer is 12 months. I don't know how much difference that makes in the real world. I guess it makes some difference. But I think there are a few things you can do. Obviously, bid appropriately, but this person sounds like they are. And on the same line, make sure you are make sure you're actually kind of all online and bidding and stuff again with this person is. There are some other factors which can have a play, but obviously you can have control over them. So, for example, if you have a need for level access accommodation, something accessible accommodation, then that probably increases your chance of getting social housing rather than private rented because it's easy to do adaptations to it. But again, there's no guarantee. But other than that, I just don't think there's anything you can really do. The 24-month bidding limit, by the way, I think I would speculate it's just a local kind of policy requirement. That's not something which is common across the country. That's just probably this local authority has a rule about that. As I say, Newham essentially has a 0-month policy. They kind of just immediately put people forward for the private rented sector without having a chance of getting social housing at all. So yeah, that's my answer. Have I missed anything, guys? Is that close to being comprehensive?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, the next question is from the live stream then. It's in parts, so I'm just gonna try and just copy paste. Incidentally, guys, this is why you might find it easier to ask questions on any video during the week because there is no character limit. Whereas in this one, obviously, there's I don't know how many characters it is, but it's yeah, then let's piece it together and see what we got. Nearly there. Cool. So I think that's all of it. So just to say, guys, just for someone else I've just seen, if you're asking a question, you're very welcome to ask a question, but please put it in the third person about a hypothetical person, preferably, or even better, just as a what if question, just generally, just so you don't have to share your personal data. So I just deleted someone there. No offense, just rephrase a question in the third person or whatever. Just you'll see how these questions are all phrased that we've done so far, with the exception of one of them which I missed. So this one here, or maybe not actually, ignore that. Yeah, so this one here is like, yeah, that's the exception now. I missed that. But effectively, the other questions are all written about, hypothetical people. It just makes it better in a number of ways. So anyway, let's get on to question 9. Sorry, me waffling on. I know an autistic person who's been diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression and is currently suicidal. He's been given an eviction letter to leave his home in 3 weeks, which would make him homeless. He's currently with the crisis team and has been referred to the MINT team, which I guess is a local mental health team of some sort, who have sent for an occupational therapist to have an assessment with him. Within this, he heard from one of his nurses that give him his medication that an Airbnb emergency accommodation was discussed alongside hostel and other accommodations. As he's feeling increasingly anxious about being homeless, should he fill out a housing form and approach the council himself, or present the eviction letter to the Mint and crisis team and let them take appropriate steps? So obviously it's going to depend about the competency of the mental health teams. My own experience of mental health teams is that they are completely incompetent when it comes to anything like this, and will basically probably be worse than a man down, and you should avoid relying on them in any sense. That being said, it might be you've got a very competent mental health team near you, and in which case leave them to it. But yeah, in answer to your question, yeah. So first thing I'd say, don't leave it to a professional to do anything useful when it comes to this stuff. They probably never had training on it. They probably don't understand anything about it, and they're probably not motivated to actually get you your maximum options. So often there'll be a little deal or a little kind of easy way out for the professional to get you into a hostel or something, is just as a way that they don't actually have to kind of fight with council. So I would say make the application now. Little bit of pedantry as well with this one. So an eviction letter obviously is kind of a colloquial term. What we're not sure here is whether we're talking about a notice, notice to order for seeking possession, whatever it's called, or a Section 21 notice, or whatever it would be. I don't even know the jargon for all this stuff, because I understand. My understanding is the eviction letter is kind of the thing you get right at the end after the possession order's been granted or something. I'm looking at Will and Karis here. Yeah, they're nodding. So that'll do. Because in one sense, I think my answer would be make a homeless application now. If you look on this YouTube channel and you search for the best way to make a homeless application, there is a comprehensive video about the steps that I would take if I was homeless to trigger that application. But yeah, there's no reason to wait. Looks very, very likely this person's going to be in priority needs through vulnerability. What the mental health team might, and not even then would it be guaranteed, but they might provide some good evidence for the housing team to make an assessment by vulnerability. But I work with mental health professionals who are not willing to put anything in writing, which is ridiculous. But that's, again, not sure what their game is, but that's what they're up to. So yeah, that would be my answer. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Shannon?
Yeah, just to add in a couple of things and we talked about it a lot about sort of letters from medical professionals and stuff, but it'd be really helpful if the medical professional not just writes down sort of the conditions and stuff, but crucially sort of how those conditions might get worse if you became homeless, because that's sort of what matters legally, and also if you have any disabilities as well, and what reasonable adjustments might need to be made, and what sort of your housing might look like in the face of those disabilities. The other thing, and bear with me because I feel like I might get on a bit of a soapbox, but the other thing I just wanted to sort of highlight is because they said around the nurses discussing hostels and other like accommodation, just because you might have support needs or you might have an illness doesn't necessarily mean that you should be forced into support accommodation if it's not what you want. And I would just be very mindful of lots of, particularly like you're talking like the person's currently suicidal, like that's a vulnerable position to be in, even if you're not necessarily a vulnerable person. And I think to make a decision to go into supported accommodation, like they can say it's a 2-year decision, it's not. You end up trapped in the system, and it's quite a long sort of long decision that you're sort of trapped into. And it can be quite hard to get out of supported accommodation through the Part 7 homelessness application route. I'm not saying don't go into supported accommodation if it's what you feel is necessary for you or what you feel is right. I would have some really good discussions with people that know you really well around what that might look like, what that might mean for you, and what your options in the future might look like, particularly if you've lived independently up until now. And I'd also do some research in the local area about what your supported accommodation providers look like and sort of their move on criteria and stuff if you are thinking about that, just as a, hopefully not too soapboxy, but
that wasn't soapboxy. There's a kind of a logical position you can arrive at with this sort of stuff, where if you're presented with an option of supported accommodation or making a homeless application with the hope that you're going to get housed, if you make a homeless application, you can always basically go, elect to go back into supported accommodation if you want to down the line. It's very easy to do generally, whereas it's very difficult to do it the other way around. So even before you look at someone's own wishes and kind of circumstances, logically, you're probably going to always be better off making a homeless application because that maximizes your options. Whereas if you, as I say, you're going to support accommodation, often people end up getting evicted for silly, minor things. Then they're intentionally homeless. Then it becomes even harder to get someone housed. So, in my opinion, supported accommodation as a sector, and there are some exceptions to this, but as a sector, basically generates long-term homeless people. That's what it does, and it then makes a lot of money out of those long-term homeless people because they're worth a lot of money in terms of housing benefit, enhanced rates and stuff. So, I've only ever worked with a few people. I can think of like two people who actually enjoyed living in supported accommodation and talked highly about it out of hundreds and hundreds. The majority of people just get stuck there and just end up in this very hopeless and horrible system. So yeah, have we answered that question? Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, I guess what the mental health team might know is actually some local housing advocacy services, or CAB that has a specialism in homelessness or something, because that might be helpful at that point. That might be something you want to do, is actually get someone who does deal with housing. But again, it might sound like I'm really horrible and cynical. Most housing professionals I have contact with don't understand very basic things about housing options. So this isn't very constructive stuff, but I would just kind of, unless you can get like a solicitor or stuff, it's probably quite difficult to really trust that they know what they're talking about. Will, did you have something to add to this one?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Number one, the question, should he make a homeless application himself? The answer is, I mean, I'm sorry if you've answered that, is yes. If you are facing homelessness, then you should always make a homeless application if you want help with it. I'm sorry if that sounds patronizing, but yeah, I mean, don't delay. The other thing is, it says, should he fill out a housing form and approach council himself? He doesn't need to fill in a housing form as such. He just needs to approach the council. I say that all he has to do is say, please, can you help me? I'm facing homelessness, or something along the lines of what's in this chat here. Because if he's got special needs and he has difficulty expressing himself, filling in a form may be a much higher mountain to climb than it is for most of us, and that shouldn't be put in his way. The other thing is, I was just trying to figure out how. I mean, maybe the Mint team are actually trying to accommodate him, or if not, maybe somehow an application has already been made because there's discussions being made about providing with accommodation. So it may be that somehow there's something going on in the background which might be dealing with the housing department. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that I guess mental health services might have a duty under Section 117 aftercare if the person's been admitted to hospital under Section 3 before. I've never actually really seen it in practice, to be honest, but there is that possibility. I mean, my guess is though that they're talking about the council here, that kind of that housing sort of option. So just someone asking about trying to get specific support. Are you in a position to talk about the kind of the online form thing you've got on the Virgo website?
Yeah. I've put I've put the online form on Notion. So it's not limited to Virgo. So I could help people through Morrison Spowett, where I also work as well. And if I put a link to the form in the chat now.
So we'll put it in the Zoom chat and I'll put it on, because I think because I'm hosting it, it will keep it on there, whereas it'll think you're spamming it.
Okay, hang on a sec. I think, yeah, it's this. That one there. So what it is if anybody does, I mean, for instance, there's somebody saying, I sent you a message, can you get back to me? I don't know. I personally didn't receive your message, if it was sent to me, or I don't know if anybody else knows about that. And then there's another one, how do I get a private, maybe that was a consultation privately from you. So what you want to do is go to the, if you click on the link to the form, that will enable you to give your initial contact details, and just a little outline. I mean, you don't have to write an essay about your problem. Just say what it is in a nutshell. If you were putting a comment on here, say, and you want, and then somebody can get back to you. the bottom line with getting advice is if you're on a low income, and particularly if you're getting universal credit or another passported benefit, you're almost certainly going to be eligible. Well, you will be eligible for legal aid if you're on universal credit, as long as you haven't got more than £8,000 savings. So you should be eligible. It may take a little time to sign you up for advice, but at the moment, I'm going to try and answer the question, how do I get a solicitor, by saying, well, if you click on here, we can get back to you. I'll go into it in more detail another time if you like, but the list of solicitors, maybe I'll put another link on there in a minute, but there's the list of solicitors that I produced is still available, and I've put it on Notion as well. So if you want to go there, you can. Don't worry about the location of the solicitors, because most solicitors in London, I mean, any solicitor can provide assistance to people in different parts of the country. I've written a little piece with a little bit more information about finding a solicitor, and that has got links to the. I'm putting that on here too. So basically, give it a go. I mean, I may have to shut it down if we get overwhelmed, and we just can't help everybody. And I can't say that everybody that signs up. It may be that your problem isn't one we can help you with, but I will try and get back to you with something, and if see how that works. So that's a bit of a long garbled answer, but basically have a go at clicking on the link and filling in the form. And I mean, we go on to the question, what's a reasonable time to expect for a response? And maybe 10 working days is probably more than I would say. I mean, hopefully within sort of 48 hours, we could try and get back to you. If it is an emergency, maybe say that in the box where it says tell us about your problem. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Will, just bear with me a second. I'm just Googling something real quick. But yeah, so guys, I put that link as well as in the live stream chat. I'll put it into the description of the video as well. And just to say as well, like I'm afraid we're out of time in terms of new questions. So I'll put just a kind of a line, drawing a line, if that makes sense. So the most recent question there, I need to roll it over to next week, or I can potentially roll it over to the Facebook one. Just for those who are watching just now, in a few minutes when we finish the remaining live stream question chats, we're going to go, me and Shannon are going to do a live stream on Facebook to see how it works. So you're very welcome to sort of come with us over to our Facebook page, Homelessness Best Practice CIC, and just to see how it works. It's the first time we've live streamed on Facebook, so we'll see how it goes. But that's where we're going to deal with the remaining questions. So this next question, I've just lined up a bit code guidance. So 106 required. My dad lives in the parish, but it is holiday home. This is only home. So okay, this is a question about local connection. I've seen a bit more about this before, but effectively, holiday homes, you can't legally live there all the time. You've basically got to spend a certain amount of time off site, whether it's like, I think in this case it was like 1 day a month, or sometimes it's like 2 weeks a year. It depends how the site's policy is. And the question is, does that basically does it kind of grant a local connection through the family member? And just to kind of answer this, I'm going to go to the code of guidance just to see just to kind of show you a few bits of this. So so this is actually the bit I couldn't find last week. I was scrambling around for it because I was talking about, like the kind of the criteria is 6 out of the last 12 months or 3 out of the last 5 years. And it does actually say it just a bit further down from what I thought it was. 10.10, and if you want to Google homelessness code of guidance, just Google it, PDF, it will come right up. The local, and this is the rule book for councils basically. So the local authorities agreement recommends that in order to give rise to a local connection, the family members relied upon as a family association should have been resident in the district for a period of at least 5 years at the date of the application from homelessness assistance. Housing authorities should remain cautious in applying the guidelines to every case, for example, in cases of refugees and other recent arrivals. So basically what this is saying is that the kind of, there is a little bit of discretion in this already. Now, I don't actually know the answer to this question because I've not come across it before, but I guess my first question would be, is there a local connection somewhere else? Because if you're making a homeless application and you don't have a local connection somewhere else, or if it's not safe for you to be in your home area, then you can basically apply anywhere you want to. So, which I obviously don't have that much information. I don't think. I'm just going to kind of check what else I've got here. So whilst I'm just looking that up, guys, any of you guys come across this before? Like, so where essentially the council saying, well, you're not legally, you're not legally living there, even though they are in real terms. Whether that would kind of qualify as local connection.
So if they haven't been legally living there,
Yeah, as in whether they've basically been living there 27 days out of 28. So as I say, because you're not technically allowed to live there the whole time.
or is it their? I suppose if it's their only or principal home. I mean, the question is, where are they living the rest of the time? But then living somewhere is a question of fact rather than law, isn't it? So if I was squatting, I mean, squatting's not illegal, but I mean, if I'm staying with somebody in a borough, I mean, that's okay, isn't it, for local connection?
Yeah, because it doesn't specify. In fact, I'm trying to think of a case I did work on, which might come into. Whereas when you get local connection for yourself because of residency, as in you've lived somewhere for 6 out of the last 12 months or 3 out of the last 5 years, in that situation, it needs to be settled accommodation. It can't just be rough sleeping. But there's no such requirement in the family connection. And I remember working with the street homeless siblings where effectively they'd both been in the town for more than 5 years. Neither of them had settled accommodation, but I basically argued that one sibling had local connection because the other sibling had been resident there, even though they hadn't had settled accommodation there for more than 5 years. So I think that, I think the local authority needs to be challenged on it. It is an interesting case in a sense. I don't want to kind of, put all my money on it, but I think, resident, the term resident, I'm also just trying to think in terms of drawing from social care, adult social care law, because I think residency in that case is literally just, you're in, your feet are in the borough that you're looking at, that you're talking about. So it's, again, it differs from housing law in that sense. So that was probably not very clear what I just said, but I think this person would have local connection through their fathers. The fact that they have, as Will says, actually in practice, they have been living there, even if they might not be living there legally. And again, the question would still stand, where else do they have local connection to for the council to say otherwise? So yeah, hopefully that answers that question a little bit. I think what you basically have to do is, I guess another question here is, are the council trying to refer this person somewhere else? What are the council actually trying to do? So they might be saying, oh, you don't have local connection here, but then what? What are they then saying? Are they saying that they therefore can't help? That would definitely not be lawful in case of homeless applications. And again, just to probably make a bit more sense of this, have a look on the channel to a video called Why Local Connection is So Confusing, because I talk there about the fact there's 2 definitions which run simultaneously. One is for homeless people, and one is for people who are in housing need but are not legally homeless, and they differ a lot. So just kind of check that video out as well to get a bit more clarity. So I think this is our, oh yeah, we've got one more question after this. Let's get back to the sheet. So next question. And just going back to question 10 slightly. So I just wonder if there's some confusion here as well, like the council's misapplying, because with part 7, with the homeless application definition local connection, there's no requirement to be providing or receiving support from that family member. Whereas part 6, often councils specify that you must be giving or receiving a certain amount of care or support to qualify. So I wonder if here we're talking about someone who's being assessed under the wrong definition anyway. I'm assuming this person has actually made a homeless application rather than just a housing register application. But yeah. So question 11, friend approached council before section 21 expired. He has been told he's in priority need, got possession order. Council said wait for bailiff's warrant. After that, they'll be given interim accommodation. That is unlawful. Very simply, if you go on the YouTube channel and search for the word bailiff, there is a video I did which I quote LGSCO a few times, which basically gave compensation for this sort of thing. Definitely unlawful. There is already reason to believe this person is homeless. Might be homeless, might be eligible, might be in priority. They've been told they're in priority, which is good. I mean, technically the council shouldn't say that yet, I guess, until they actually reach a decision, but hey ho. But yeah, so although the councils do it all the time, the reason they do it all the time is that no one challenges them, and so they've been allowed to get away with it for years. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this new legislation coming in this year, what difference it's going to make. But yeah, basically complain. If you've already been told you're in priority need, there's very little to lose by complaining, because yeah, the council's kind of already told you that they're going to owe you the main duty, or certainly the interim accommodation duty anyway. So yeah, oh sorry, there's a bit more to this. So let's see what the second half is. He was never notified if when relief duty started. It seems council is delaying to give duty. What can you do to have the council follow the law? Yeah, what? So I think in this case, you're much safer to complain. There's always going to be a risk, so you have to weigh up for yourself. Do you run that risk of the housing officer being nasty if they've effectively kind of already said that that you're in priority? We haven't talked about intentional homelessness here yet because it's not included, but yeah, I mean, yeah, you can politely just send them the it's paragraph 6.35 of the code of guidance on which you want to send them. So I'll just bring that up just to give you familiarise yourself with it. So if we got to hold on a sec. So you have to read. Yeah, I'm not going to go through it right now again because it's obviously quite complicated. You need to read this very carefully because the devil's in the detail. But in effect, what it's saying is, if you've been served a valid notice, Section 21 notice, and there's no chance of negotiating with the landlord to keep you, and there would be no defence for an application for possession order, which sounds is the case here, then it is unlikely to be reasonable for the applicant to continue to occupy, which is code for they're homeless, and therefore the interim accommodation duty is kicked in already. If you go on that video on the channel, it's got a couple of LGO decisions where they get compensation where the council did exactly this. So I would suggest just kind of reading, watching that video, reading through those LGSO decisions, and then making a decision about whether you want to complain now or whether you want to wait until later to complain, because that is, you can do that. It just depends how much you don't want to wait around for the bailiff's warrant. So there, and then the final question, I don't know about local connection, I think. Yeah. So this is an interesting one, actually. On the shelter website, it states that you must have lived in the area by choice for local connection. Can you please elaborate on this by choice? So the obvious example here would be someone who's in prison. So if you've got, Bedford prison, someone's been in Bedford prison for more than 6 months, they didn't choose to be in Bedford prison. They had to be there. So that would, they would not get local connection to Bedford because they've been in Bedford prison. I think this has now changed, actually. I don't want to be 100% sure of this. It used to be that being in like an army barracks would not kind of lead to local connection, but I think it does now. I think they kind of changed it so that you would have local connection to that area that you've been in the barracks for. And I think this is a total myth, but back in the day, they kind of say, you don't have local connection to your kids because they don't live there by choice. And it's like, what? But I think that's the only kind of other situation I can think of when they're talking about this kind of idea by choice. So if you chose to be, as in, you weren't in custody, then you could be assumed to be there by choice, and therefore you'd have local connection. Shannon?
It's not by choice part, but you also don't get local connection if you've gone to uni somewhere, which arguably you've gone by choice. But just to highlight, it's another caveat where you wouldn't get local connection just because you've lived in like student halls in an area, for example.
Cool. Okay, yeah. So hopefully that's all the questions we're going to do tonight on this YouTube. Thanks, Karis and Will, for your time. I think me and Shannon are going to embark on this journey on a Facebook live stream now. So guys, if you're watching, if you haven't liked it yet, please do give it a like if you found it useful. If you want to come with us over to our Facebook page and see how this all works, there's about 5 questions left that are coming through the week which are not anonymized, which we're going to do next. So we'll see how it goes, basically. But yeah, this is the end of the live stream on the YouTube for this week. Thanks very much for coming, and we'll be on Will's channel on Monday. And then back here next Thursday.
Can I just put a link to my channel since you've been so kind in letting me plug all my stuff? If I put that in, that's the link there on the chat. I think if it works, it should be a link to the next week's Monday's live stream.
Cool. So
everyone's welcome. If you've got any more questions.
Yeah, hold on. I've just copied and pasted the wrong thing. Here we go. Right, yeah. So yeah, click on that link, and that should take you through to. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's called William Flack Law Channel. If you can't use the link, that's what it's called. So have a look at that. So yeah, and other than that, hopefully it's been useful tonight, guys. As we saw from the beginning, that comment we saw come in, it's about persevering and basically just kind of not going away from the council. Just keep going. The law is good. It probably will favour you unless you've been really stupid. So yeah, there probably will be a duty to house you, but councils will just try and avoid that duty. So yeah, other than that, take it easy, guys. And again, if you happen to see a useful bit of a video that I'm putting up, please do feel free to share it widely, just to kind of get it out there, really. But other than that, we'll see you soon.